Hello, and welcome back to the Okanagan Reader. I'm your host, Jim Bowering. Today's reading is Chapter 27 of Green Comet, the first book in the Green Comet trilogy. In Chapter 27, Elgin and Frances enjoy coffee and toast with iceberry jam on their new balcony. They talk about the visitor, but it makes her just as uncomfortable as it did Buzzard. Fran suggests that they grow iceberries right there on the walls of the square. They have an appointment with the doctor. Here we go then.
Chapter 27. They go to the doctor. Ranny? She looked up with a surprised smile. Yes? May I call you Ranny? They were on their new balcony having breakfast and watching the square wake up. Elgin was enjoying a piece of toast with iceberry jam, idly wondering how yeast would rise in microgravity. I'd like to call you that if you don't mind. It sounds right. Of course you can, said Fran. I'd like it too. It came out the night before as they snuggled and talked far past midnight. Their bedroom was the one against the orange wall, farthest from the hallway entrance, at the opposite end of their rooms. Their ceiling was colored by the night lighting of the square when everything was turned off except the lights in the columns and friezes. The four colors were somewhat blended, but were visible individually as well. So their ceiling was dominated by the proximity of orange and yellow, with green and red playing lesser roles. They were telling each other as much as they could about their previous lives, hungry to know, but with a sweet regret that so much of their time had been spent apart. Fran talked about a niece that she was very fond of, a sweet, bright little girl. I think Maria was probably like her when she was younger, she said. Her niece was a good talker, but she had trouble with Fran's name and always called her Ranny. It became a pet name amongst family. Her niece was one of the people she lost in the Yellow Comet incident, so remembering her was painful. But she was no different from most of the people on Green Comet. Pretty well everyone had lost somebody in that tragedy. Everybody had to deal with it, and she knew that avoiding the memory was not the way. She wouldn't ask Elgin to not remind her. Instead, she was glad to have her memory stirred in such a beautiful way. Each time he used that name, her niece would be commemorated with love. Yes, she told him again. I would love it if you did. Thanks, he said. I didn't want to intrude on something special, but it just feels right. She came over and snuggled under his arm. It is right, she said. It's perfect. They watched the square for a while, until he finished his piece of toast and had to prepare another. He tried to free his arm, but she said, No, you don't. I like that right where it is. She buttered a piece of toast and spread some jam on it. Here you go, she said, burrowing back in. Didn't anyone ever tell you that when you put your arm around a girl, it's hers until she says so? No, he said, biting his toast, but it sounds okay to me. He chewed for a moment. Except maybe flashball. This might be a little awkward playing flashball. Her laugh rang out across the square, stopping people and turning heads. When they saw who it was, they smiled and waved and went on with their business. While they had their breakfast and talked, the lighting in the square had been coming up. The daytime lighting increased its intensity, while the columns and friezes darkened. It took about a half hour to make the transition from night to day. When it was done, the square looked as if it was lighted by the sun on a day with a high, thin overcast. The indirect lighting, though it was distinctly yellow and dim, looked bright and white to their enhanced eyes. Ranny? Said Elgin softly. Mm-hmm, she murmured. What do you think of the visitor? The visitor? He could feel her tense subtly. What about it? Well, now that we know it's artificial, what do you think they want? I don't know, Elgin, she said. He sensed some evasiveness. It was like Buzzard's rejection of the question, only much better disguised. Please, Fran, he said gently. I can tell. Both you and Buzzard are concerned, but you're both hiding it. She sat up out from under his arm and turned to look at him. He was moved again by her golden beauty, nearly hypnotized by the shifting light reflected by her tapetums. She put her palm on his chest. "We don't know anything for sure," she said, her expression both minimal and profound. "We've just shared some doubts." "Doubts?" "Yes," she said. She looked out over the square, and Elgin saw a brief flicker of sadness cross her face. "It's more of a feeling than anything else," she said quietly. "We just wonder why they haven't tried to communicate with us." She turned her face back to Elgin. "We decided pretty early on that the visitor is artificial, and we can't think of any good reason why they wouldn't talk to us." He checked and double-checked, but his initial sense that it sounded right stood up to scrutiny. The bad feeling that he got from Buzzard was now confirmed and multiplied by Fran. He asked, "What have you done about it? Have you warned anybody?" "What would we tell them? That we have a bad feeling?" "But it's right. You say it and I know it." "I don't think that would qualify as proof, Elgin." She turned and snuggled back under his arm. "Would you like another piece of toast?" "But we can't just leave it like this. There must be something we can do." "The envoys will probably meet up with it soon. We'll find out more then." She held up a piece of toast. "Jam?" He knew she was right. There was nothing they could do now that would help. There were plenty of people warning of the danger and predicting doom. If they said anything now when they had no proof, they'd be just another pack of crackpots. She was right. The best thing would be to wait and see. "Yes, please," he said. "Lots of jam." After a few moments where the crunch of toast was the only thing breaking their silence, she said, "There are no iceberries growing in the square, are there?" He looked around and didn't see the distinctive texture and sheen of an iceberry patch on any of the walls. "It doesn't look like it. Why?" "I think we should grow some," she said, gesturing at the facade of their apartment. "Right here on the front. There's quite a bit of blank wall there." "Is that allowed? I mean, isn't there a reason for it?" "I don't know," she said. "I'll have to look it up, I guess. But if it's okay, do you want to?" "Sure," he said, popping in another bite. "I love iceberries." "Good. Me too. I'd love to come out here in the morning and have a couple of fresh berries for breakfast." She stared at the wall, thinking. "Is it hard to grow them, do you think?" "I don't know, but I doubt it. They seem to grow just about anywhere, and I never see anyone tending them." "That's right," she said. "About the only people you see around them are the kids grabbing a quick snack." They shared a chuckle over that image. "Why shouldn't they be able to do it in the square?" "Are you thinking we might have kids up here picking berries off our wall?" "I hope so," she said, smiling up into his face. "Me too," he said, leaning forward for a kiss. "I like kids. I'd like it if we had some around here all the time." He looked deep into her eyes so she'd know what he meant, and was surprised and confused by her complicated expression. She was looking down now, and her voice was low. "You'd like to have children, wouldn't you?" "Of course," he said. "The more of you there is in the world, the better." He tried to see what she was thinking, but she wouldn't look at him. "I'd like it too," she said, looking out at the now bustling square. "And I had an idea you wanted to." Finally she faced him. "I thought it might come up, so I made an appointment." "What kind of appointment?" He was intensely interested now. Anyone else might have wilted under his focus. "With the doctor," she said. "I've already been once, and now I think we should go together." She had on her business face. "We'll need to have some tests done if we're going to make a child." It sounded right to him, and he also knew it was right. The comet couldn't afford any problems it could avoid, so anyone planning children got tested to rule out anything foreseeable. Naturally, any child born with congenital difficulties was accepted, and raised and supported to the best of their ability. But in their situation, with highly constrained resources, it was prudent to avoid the necessity. "You're right," he said, taking his last bite and dusting off his fingers. "When's the appointment?" "This morning," she said, getting up and picking up dishes to take inside. He picked up the rest of the dishes and followed her. "This morning?" He hurried to catch up. "How did you know?" She had an appointment scheduled for this morning, before they talked, before he even thought about it. Then he laughed at himself. Of course she knew before he did. She always did. "Never mind," he said, taking the dishes from her and putting them in the sink bladder. He sealed it up and turned on the water, sliding his hands into gloves to scrub the dishes. "When do we have to be there?" She was waiting to dry, standing beside him at the sink. "In an hour or so," she said. "But the doctor said there's no deadline. He's cleared his schedule for the rest of the day, so he says we can come whenever we want and stay until whenever." "Boy, you must have some pull," he said, removing his hands and cycling out the soapy water, then in the rinse water. Back into the gloves for a quick swizzle, then let the bladder squeeze out the water. He unsealed it, and she began to dry. "The doctor is a friend," she said modestly. "We're always happy to make time for each other." "I look forward to meeting him." He put away the dishes as she passed them to him. The doctor's office was just off the square, a few meters down one of the corridors on the orange side. They could have just flown down from their balcony directly to the portal, but they chose to go out via their hallway. Fran said, "We should use it once in a while, even if only for practice." "Yeah," said Elgin, "otherwise we might as well not have a door at all." He opened it for her, ceremoniously ushering her out. The hallway was still pristine with the sharp, clear lines of fresh icework. It was likely to stay that way for now, since theirs was still the only apartment that used it. It wouldn't be long, though. Work was already underway on another apartment on their floor, and the ones above were in the works. They took the elevator down to the ground floor. That is, they dropped through a hole into the corridor below. There were some people about, mostly just arriving for their day's work, or making an early visit to one of the enterprises on this corridor. They exchanged greetings in passing, with a few words of a more personal nature for the new neighbors they were getting to know. It made them glad they came out this way, and they resolved that they'd do it again. They took their time, coasting out through the yellow pillars and angling across the square, stopping to chat at the slightest excuse. Just outside the orange pillars, they stopped and looked back at the yellow wall and their new apartment. Fran was quiet as they stood there. Elgin could imagine iceberry patches with children foraging in them. He could picture the whole wall, from the top of the shops up to the ceiling, occupied by rooms. Already on their floor, on the other side of the yellow columns, he could see faint shadows of activity as another apartment was being prepared behind the ice. His mind was full of the potential of the future, and he smiled as he felt Fran's hand take his. The doctor met them personally and led them into his office. It was arranged traditionally, with 2 chairs facing a desk and his chair behind it. He seated them after a brief introduction and a quick familiar hug from Fran. Then he went around and sat down. He had a few pieces of perma-paper in front of him, and he studied them, a slight doctorly frown between his brows. It was the space above the brows that caught Elgin's attention. The doctor seemed to have an unusually high forehead, and above that the fur looked really thin. It was the first sign of baldness or hair loss of any kind that Elgin had seen since waking up on the Comet. He was surprised. You never saw this with other fur-bearing animals. The doctor looked up and caught him staring. Elgin was embarrassed, but the doctor wasn't. He said, "It looks strange, doesn't it?" "I'm sorry," said Elgin. "I didn't mean to be rude." "Don't apologize. It's unusual, and I'd be worried if you weren't curious about it." He leaned forward and tipped his head down, ruffling the thinning fur with his fingers. "It runs in my family. The men on both sides have always tended to go bald young. Even the women are prone to thin hair." "Thank you, Elgin realized he wasn't sure of the man's name. "Doctor," said the doctor. "It's my Comet name. You can call me Doctor, and refer to me as the Doctor." "Okay, Doctor." Elgin thought about it. "But you're not the only doctor here, are you?" "No, there are about a dozen of us awake at any time." "Isn't that confusing? Aren't the others also referred to as the Doctor?" "Yes," said the doctor, laughing heartily. "Some of them are mad at me, but I think they're secretly annoyed because they didn't think of it first. They thought they were being clever by choosing names like Galen and Hippocrates." Fran joined in the laughter, and so did Elgin, which obviously pleased the doctor, but his expression was complicated by regret. Fran saw it and guessed correctly that the news wouldn't be good. "I think we should let Elgin know, don't you?" she said. The doctor looked glumly at his papers. "Of course," he said. He wrestled for the words, glancing sadly at them. Why, he wondered, do things happen this way? If anyone should be having children, it should be these two, not only because they were obviously such good stock, but also because it would be the perfect expression of their legendary love. But he was a doctor, and he had learned long ago that things happen to people not because they deserved them, nor because they didn't. Things happened because they happened, and the people they happened to were just in the way at the time. He had also learned that the best words at a time like this were the plain, honest ones. "Elgin," he said, "Fran came to me last week for some genetic tests." Elgin glanced at her and back to him. "She wanted me to confirm something for her, although I think she was hoping I could somehow refute it." He looked at Fran, so beautiful and strong, but with a fragile hope hanging on, like a child's hope that the words of someone with authority could make it so. He forged ahead, reminding himself that he wasn't personally killing that hope. "Nothing's changed, Fran. Your imprinted genes are still there. Any child of yours would be at great risk." She bowed her head, looking very small in her chair. Elgin had lost the thread when imprinted genes were mentioned, but he hadn't missed the meaning. He said to the doctor, "Do you mean she can't have children?" "No," said the doctor. "You can have children if you want, but because of Fran's genetic condition it would be dangerous." "Dangerous for her?" "No, for the baby." The doctor used plain language for him. "She would pass on the genes, and they could make the baby very sick." "But why don't they make her sick?" "They don't make me sick because they have a backup," said Fran in a small voice. Her eyes flicked up to meet his, then back down. "Our genes come in pairs, so if one is damaged, the other can take over." "Then that's okay," he said. "Your backups are working, and so would the baby's." "But with imprinted genes, there is no backup," she said. Elgin didn't reply. He could hear it. He had heard it in the doctor's voice as well, but he'd been trying to ignore it. What they were saying was right. They shouldn't have any children. "I'm sorry, Elgin," the doctor said. "More sorry than you think. Any child of yours, of the two of you, would have been something to look forward to." Elgin's desperation scrambled for another angle. His beloved was crumpled in her chair, radiating pain. "But what about genetic therapy? Like during hibernation, I mean, if we can grow wings and fur, why can't we fix her genes?" The doctor shook his head. "Those things are simple compared to this. They're just manipulating existing functions. Things like imprinted genes and," he patted his head with a wry smile, "baldness are still beyond us." Elgin subsided. He had the feeling he was only bringing up things that they'd both gone through already anyway. He accepted it and prepared to carry on in this new direction. He reached over and picked up Fran's hand from her lap. She allowed him to take it, but it was lifeless in his grip. "It's okay, Fran," he said, squeezing. "It doesn't matter." Without lifting her head, she murmured, "But you want children. I know you do." She looked up. "You still can. There are plenty of women who would have your child." Her voice clotted. "Who could have your child." Her head fell again. "There are plenty of women," he said, "but there's only one of you." He felt her hand grip his. "All I want is you. All those women can have other people's babies." He waited until she raised her eyes, looking at him from under her brows. "I want you, Ranny, if you still want me." She squeezed his hand hard and launched herself out of the chair. She nearly knocked the wind out of him, then just about hugged his head off, as she sobbed into his neck. He wrapped his arms around her and held on. Over her shoulder, past the top of her wing, he could see the doctor smiling a huge, gratified smile. It looked as if something was glittering in his eyes, too.